Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about garden path reanalysis today, and we hope to use the Q-based retrieval model to help us better understand reanalysis. So first of all, let's have a quick look at garden path ambiguity. I'm going to show you an NPZ ambiguity incrementally. So let's have a look. Well, Mary dressed the baby. And for now, for comprehenders, they may have already established a constituent like Mary dressed the baby due to minimal attachment. And this is called initial analysis. With the sentence continues, we have fell of the bed, and comprehenders may realize it cannot be integrated into initial analysis. So they have to do something to make the sentence finally grammatical. And this process is called reanalysis. So hopefully, comprehenders can reach the finally correct interpretation, like Mary dressed and the baby boy began to cry. Baby boy fell off the bed. And if we ask comprehension questions, for example, did Mary dress the baby boy? We may receive a lot of incorrect answers to say yes, according to earlier research from Christensen in 2001 and later. This raised the question, why did misinterpretation happen, and how does reanalysis take place? Part of the answers to the questions involve two possibilities. Firstly, grammatically illicit analyses are generated during reanalysis. It means during reanalysis, the parser may know the baby boy is the ambiguous region, but ultimately, it may not distinguish its role successfully. So there might be constituents like Mary dressed the baby boy and the baby boy fell off the bed. It seems like the particular phrase is shared by two constituents, causing misinterpretation. Alternatively, analysis can be grammatically illicit, but the parser is not able to suppress its initial interpretations. Meaning during reanalysis, the parser knows the baby boy should be the subject of fell off the bed, and it make it. But the initial analysis, Mary dressed the baby boy, is still lingering in memory, and this lingering initial analysis causes misinterpretations. So according to some latest studies, like Huang and Ferreira in 2021 and Slattery and All in 2013, they try to rule out the first possibility and saying reanalysis is successful. But our today's goal is to revisit the first possibility, and we will use reflexives to provide more evidence. Okay, so this is the roadmap for today. And we're going to have a look at the first section, reanalysis and syntactic representations. So later I'm going to use an example from Huang and Ferreira study to illustrate what happens. Let's have a look at the sentence. While Mary dressed the baby boy that was small and cute, fell off the bed and hurt himself very badly. So we're going to use a simplified version by removing the relative clause, and I will invite you to have a look at the first section here. So if reanalysis is globally successful, then the parser may realize the ultimate structure should be Mary dressed and the baby boy fell off the bed. And then how reflexive works. With the continuation of the sentence, because the baby boy is identified as the subject, so the following part should be combined into the main clause. In that case, while himself looks for its antecedent, it finds the baby boy, and these two are in the same gender, so everything's good. However, if we use the baby girl case here, again, the final part should be combined into the main clause, and himself finds the baby girl, but there is a gender mismatch effect. This is based on reanalysis is successful, but if reanalysis is only partial, what may happen? So the partial reanalysis predicts the recovery may not be successful, meaning the baby boy is still shared by two constituents. In that case, the double role of the baby boy, meaning the subjectiveness and objectiveness, may stop the reflexive in identifying its antecedent clearly. So in that case, this binding might be problematic. And it is the same in the baby girl case. So the partial reanalysis predicts in this condition, there should be an equally difficulty in two conditions. So let's have a look at their data. I'm going to show you control conditions first. They have control match and control mismatch with reflexive himself. In that case, we would like to see a gender mismatch effects, and here it is. And in their garden path condition, they have the baby boy and the baby girl. In that case, if reanalysis is successful, then we would like to see the gender mismatch effects again. But if reanalysis is only partial, then we would like to see in garden paths the difficulty should be very similar. And here is their results. So they replicate the garden path effects. That's what they reported. There is gender match effects, but no interaction with garden paths. It's very powerful because it means the comprehenders encountered the reflexive, they had correctly built its binding domain. And it means ambiguous NP had been fully reanalyzed, leading to the global grammatical analysis. That is why they rule out the first possibility. However, the question remains, how does reanalysis find the constituent the path is looking for? According to literature, there might be some local operations, for example, the diagnose and the cure model. It predicts, while the parser realized the final part cannot be combined into the initial analysis, they are trying to do some local search to the nearest NP. So the parser can find the baby boy as the possible short subject, and there is a steal mechanism. The parser steals the baby boy and make it the subject of the main clause. It is workable because we can get a final correct interpretation. But this model is proposed very early before the proliferation of Q-based retrieval, which predicts that the subject-verb relationship can also be formed during Q-based retrieval. Thus, we want to talk about this possibility. So let's have a look at a very typical agreement attraction sentence. The key to the cells were rusty for many years of disuse. So part of the story here is war looks for a possible subject through retrieval cues plus n and plus plural. And in this case, the cells should be retrieved because it satisfied both retrieval cues. That makes the ungrammatical sentence finally more acceptable, and this is called illusions of grammaticality. Because Q-based retrieval predicts agreement attraction, so we want to see in NPZ reanalysis whether or not we can see the similar phenomena here. So we manipulated sentences like we use war in this NPZ ambiguity, and the war looks for something like plus n and plus plural, and the valuable trophies should be retrieved. It leads to the consequence like after the mates polished, the valuable trophies are returned. It is super good. However, if we reverse the plural cue from the two NPs, for example, we make the irrelevant NP the mates plural, but the relevant NP the trophy singular, the Q-based retrieval model predicts or may find the mates as the subject. And in that case, it may lead to an illicit representation, like the mates were returned to the committee. Okay? So before we see the real data, let's have a quick comparison between the two models. The Q-based retrieval model predicts the parser looks for the subject via retrieval cues. So in that case, the first sentence, war finds trophies and forms the constituent, is the match condition. And in illusory condition, war finds the mates as the subject and forms the constituents. But in mismatch condition, or may not find any subject here. However, the diagnose and cure model predicts the parser looks for its subject through a local operation to the nearest NP. So in this condition, match condition, or finds the trophies and everything is good, but in illusory and mismatch conditions, because the nearest NP is always the valuable trophy, so war may find them as the subject, and it forms a ungrammaticality. For short, the Q-based retrieval model predicts match and illusory conditions should be equally easy because the parser can always locate its subject via retrieval cues. But the diagnose and cure model predicts the mismatch and illusory conditions should be equally difficult because there is ungrammaticality. Let's have a look at our data. So in control conditions, we have control match and control mismatch, and we would like to see a number mismatch effects here. And illusory condition, because there is still a ungrammaticality, so it comes to the mismatch condition. So there is still the mismatch effects. If we compare illusory and match conditions, the difference is significant. In garden path condition, so garden path match and the mismatch, we see the number mismatch effects here, and our illusory condition. Again, if reanalysis is Q-based, the illusory condition should be very similar to match condition. Otherwise, illusory condition should go to mismatch condition. And this is our data. And if we compare illusory and match here, there is no significant difference. So the current results tells us garden path illusory condition shows reanalysis is sensitive to the number of irrelevant NP, and the control conditions tells us the consideration of irrelevant NP occurs when reanalysis is required. We call this illusions of recovery. So for now, although we know reanalysis is sensitive to the irrelevant NP, what is still not clear is whether or not the irrelevant NP is considered as the subject during reanalysis, meaning whether or not the grammatical structure is changed during reanalysis. If we can find some evidence for the second question, we may reopen the first possibility. So we did a further study by using reflexive to probe the initial structure. And we adopted a paradigm from Juan de Ferreira and Slattery and al. Using reflexives to probe the subject analysis. And we use our 2x3 design. It's a self-paced reading. So this is our stimuli. It's similar from Juan de Ferreira's paper. Let's have a quick look at this section. So this is the ambiguous section. While if reanalysis is cue-based, what may happen here? So the parser may use retrieval cues during the disambiguating verb by using +n to retrieve both Mary and the baby boy as the subject. So the structure should be Mary fell off the bed and the baby boy fell off the bed. While continue processing the reflexive region himself, then there is one possible gender match here. The baby boy matches himself to building the reflexive and antecedent relationship. So it should be good. And in our second condition, where we have Mary dressed the baby girl, again, file can locate Mary and the baby girl as the subject, and there might be structures like Mary fell off the bed or the baby girl fell off the bed. In that case, himself cannot find a possible antecedent matching the masculine gender in this case. So it should be bad. And thirdly, we add our illusory condition. We make the first NP Mary to be Jason, and we have the initial part like Jason dressed the baby girl fell off. So fell off may retrieve both Jason and the baby girl as a subject, having structures like Jason fell off the bed and the baby girl fell off the bed. Then in that case, himself may find Jason as a possible antecedent because there is a gender match here. So it should be easy. And we call this match, mismatch, and illusory conditions. Let's have a look at our data. So in control conditions, we have control match, control mismatch, and there we should see a gender mismatch effects, as we can see here. And in our illusory condition, so because there is no comma, so the ultimate subject is always the baby girl, and the baby girl mismatches himself in gender. So we want to replicate the gender mismatch effects here. That is the control condition. And more exciting is the garden path condition. So if we go through the garden path match first, so during the disambiguating region, reanalysis may tell us both Mary and the baby boy can be a possible subject. And while processing himself may find the baby boy as a possible antecedent, and the reading time should be low. In our garden path mismatch condition, reanalysis tells us Mary and the baby girl are possible subjects, and himself cannot find a perfect antecedent matching its gender cue. So this one should be bad. And here is the gender mismatch effects. Well, lastly, if we have a look at our garden path illusory condition, so during reanalysis, the parser may know Jason and the baby girl are possible subjects. While processing the reflexive, himself may find Jason as a possible antecedent. In that case, the reading time should be low. Otherwise, the reading time should be high. And we find our actual reading time is like in the middle. And if we compare the illusory and the match condition here, there is no significant difference. So this is the comparison between the control conditions and the garden path conditions. So in control conditions, both mismatch and illusory condition shows a significant difference compared to the match condition. And in our garden path condition, only match and mismatch show a significant difference, but illusory and match shows no difference. What does it tell us? So in control conditions, we have gender mismatch effects regardless of the irrelevant NP's gender. And in our garden path mismatch condition, we find a significant gender mismatch effect for both NPs who are gender mismatched. And the garden path illusory condition, we find a huge disruption being reduced because the irrelevant NP matches the reflexive. So that can be used as evidence that during reanalysis, the parser indeed considered the irrelevant NP. And it helps us to open the first possibility that grammatically illicit representations may be generated during reanalysis. But we still have some questions. Firstly, comprehenders misinterpret the garden path illusions. That leads to interpretive differences, but we do not know when they selected NP1 and when they select NP2. Is that a random selections or during some actual factors? It's still not clear. So maybe we have Jason fell off the bed and the baby girl fell off the bed, but we do not know when the parser goes to the first NP or when it goes to the second. And secondly, the irrelevant NP might be retrieved, but the parser can quickly determine it is unable to function as the main clause subject. That means the parser abandons it in favor for a mismatching but relevant NP. So in that hypothesis, Jason may be retrieved, but then abandoned, so it cannot serve as a possible subject. So for either directions, it motivates us to think of more about the new models of reanalysis. That is everything. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sarah Brown-Schmidt at Vanderbilt. I guess I had two questions. One, could you show your sentences? Is it possible to show your sentences?
Okay, yeah.
Like on the slide, or I mean, I can look at the PDF. But...
Okay, sure, no problem.
Okay.
Sure. I'm sorry, which?
The ambiguous ones, the garden path.
Okay.
There's too many sentences for me to keep in my head at one time.
Okay.
What was the last with Jason?
Oh.
Yes, Jason. Okay, so I'm the first question is thinking about this from the perspective of, say, like the phonemic restoration effect and noisy channel models of processing. I think in that last sentence you can hallucinate a pronoun and fix it. So like, while Jason dressed the baby girl that was small and cute fell off the bed, and he hurt himself very badly. And so from that kind of perspective, I'm wondering to what extent people are maintaining sort of illusory interpretations versus hallucinating or sort of doing minor fixes. So that's question one. And then question two is, I was surprised not to see follow-up probes about the lingering misinterpretation, like I'm thinking Christian Ferreira. So did you do those follow-up probes? That's the second question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll go to the second question first. We indeed have some pilot data for misinterpretations by asking comprehension questions. For example, we have the conditions here, like after the maids polished the valuable trophies were returned, and we ask was or were the maids returned to the committee. And thus we can see that the accuracy in illusory conditions is very low, and the difference is huge, which might be an indicator that the first irrelevant NP indeed considered as a subject during reanalysis.
So accuracy here in the illusory condition means endorsing?
I was saying, like in these conditions, yeah, and in garden path condition, for example, the answer should be no, but we have many yes answers, making the accuracy very low. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, what's your first question?
So the other question was more of a broader point in terms of thinking through the hypothesis space for what could people be doing and constructing meaning out of these sentences. And you articulated several kinds of possibilities. It seems an additional possibility that comes to us from things like the phonemic restoration effect or noisy channel models where people sort of can assume maybe the typing wasn't so great and the person forgot the pronoun. Is that another possible interpretation of some of your effects?
Okay, cool. That's a good question. And for current study, we want to be very consistent to Slattery et al. And Ferreira's paper that using reflexive only as a structural prop, instead of saying that reflexive might be participating in reanalysis or attraction there. So we want to say for the first part, we may have reanalysis to have whether first impure, the second is retrieved, and that is final. And reflexive only here is to detect what is your prior structure. So in that case, reflexive may not be influenced by other factors, but it's only one possibility. And we do have some very tiny difference in seeing that reflexives might be influenced by other factors. For example, if we compare the himself and herself cases, or if we compare, because we have like the proper name cases like Jason, Mary, and we have stereotypical gender cases like the nurse, the doctor, and we can also see a tiny difference. But they are not significant enough, so we insist that reanalysis finding here is only like a structural cue. Thank you.
Okay, I finally get to ask a question. Okay, so I was, Elsie Kaiser, USC. Thank you, this is very interesting. I was curious, actually, I have two things I was wondering about. One is a follow-up to Sarah's question, actually related to the accuracy. Did you look at, in the reflexive experiment, in any way, what people's interpretations were in the end? I know people have done the question type task, they've done the paraphrase type task.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you did anything like that for the reflexive experiment, or if you plan to do something like that.
Yeah, I plan to do that. It's my next stage. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Because I think that could also help shed light on what kind of repairs might people be doing. So yeah, so happy to hear that. Then I was curious about the verbs that you had, because you mentioned you had the example with dressed, and that's one of those inherently reflexive verbs. Mm-hmm. Then there's ones like the polished or like the hunting the deer examples with the optionally transitive. Yeah. So I was curious if you could comment on which types you used in the reflexive study, and if you think that makes a difference.
We have both types of verbs, because we adopt the Juan de Ferreira's stimuli, and they have 3 types of words, including the reciprocal verbs. But in our design, reciprocal verbs doesn't work, so we rule out that one, so we have from 2 types of verbs here.
Did you find any differences between the inherently reflexive and the optionally transitive?
No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah, which is interesting, because that's something that, I think brings up some interesting questions about whether they differ in their syntax. So that's actually, I think, quite revealing if they don't differ. So.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Hi, Sarah. I'm at Georgetown. This is going to be probably a long shot question just because I don't do this kind of work, but I can't get over the difference between after the maid polished the valuable trophies versus after Mary dressed the baby boy. And the reason because I have a desire to want to close off after baby, whereas after valuable, I have no desire to want to close off, right? And so there's this difference between these 2 stimulus types. And I wonder if you think that if you can have grammatically illicit representations be generated, what would then prevent someone from maybe maintaining closing off after baby and keeping boy as a subject, even though there's no determiner there, whereas you would still be inclined to wait to close off after trophies in the other example?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. And I was thinking of that possibility. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so if we have the sentence, so maybe during the fell-off region, the parser have both selection, like both Mary and the baby boy, like a possible subject, but with the continuation receiving more information. But we don't know it's like more like semantic information or others. It can help the parser to make a decision before they reach the reflexive region. That might be the reason why we have the illusory line in the middle, but we haven't tested such possibilities. Thank you.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again.